Chapter 4, Learning the Ropes. Now day followed day in peaceful succession, while a strong, warm breeze pushed the ship on steadily. The crew, at ease at last with the new vessel and all her rigging, fell into a routine. Each person was on watch for 4 hours, during which they would steer the ship, stand at a lookout in the bow, attend to upkeep and repairs, or handle the big canvas sails. After 4 hours, they were off for 8 hours to eat, sleep, or just enjoy the sight of the big sails pulling the ship along through the clear blue sea. Felix began to learn more and more about the crew. He knew the carpenter, Edgar, would stop whatever project he was working on to dangle a bit of cork on a string for Felix's entertainment. He understood not to bother the captain when he was on deck, but when he was in his cabin reading, the captain let Felix sleep in his lap. Felix also learned that the second mate, Mr. Small, could be counted on to smile through his red beard and flip him a bit of cheese sliced from the hunk he always seemed to have in his pocket. Felix knew the crew had accepted him when the third mate, Jan Junker, made Felix his own life jacket to wear during safety drills. He also learned the hard way about the dangers of living on a sailing ship. The sea, which usually stayed on the outside of the ship, could sometimes sweep aboard and catch him unaware. Lucky for Felix, when this happened once, one of the cooks, Dick Brennan, grabbed him as he was about to be washed out through the scupper with the retreating water. Another time Felix was dozing on one of his favorite spots, the pin rail on the main deck, when he heard Captain Villiers shout, "Cast off the clew garnet!" The next thing Felix knew, he was tangled in a line as it flew up in the air, and he was looking down on Fred Edwards, who had jumped to obey the captain's orders. Fred caught the kitten as he tumbled to the deck. "Careful there, young Felix," Fred said to him. "You mind where you take your naps. There won't always be somebody ready to save you." Fred set the shivering kitten on the deck, gave him a gentle pat on the behind, and sent him on his way. Even at night he wasn't safe. Felix's black fur made him hard to see. Crewman David Coven, hurrying to get on deck, in response to the mate's call one dark evening, stepped on Felix's right front leg. Felix shrieked and ran under the ladder. Realizing what he must have done, David leaned down and scooped up the kitten from his hiding place and brought him to the doctor's cabin. "This little guy is as black as night. It's no wonder I didn't see him sleeping under the ladder. Do you think he'll be all right, Doc? I'd hate to think I hurt him." Felix tried to soothe the ache by licking his leg. Dr. Stevens took the leg in his hand. "Do you know what they say about cats' bones? They'll heal themselves if you leave them alone. This doesn't seem too bad." The doctor wrapped the leg in a bandage to keep it still. "Bring the kitten down to the cabin and ask Graham to keep him confined for a few days. I'll come around and check on him in the morning." Graham shared his cabin with the American cabin boy on the ship, Joe Meany. The two young men had plenty of time to get to know each other during the voyage. They traded stories of their homes. They often talked about what they would do when the ship sailed into port. "I'll be heading back to England after the voyage," Graham told Joe. "I've asked the captain about signing on another ship after this adventure. But I don't know what will become of Felix." The cat, growing steadily on his diet of flying fish and scraps of food from the crew, licked his sore leg. "All he's ever known is this ship and the crew. Do you think they'll let him stay aboard when we get to Plymouth? Do you think the people at the museum, Plymouth Plantation, will like cats?" He could patrol the ship at night and keep the rats at bay. One hiss from him and those old rats will be running scared. Felix listened as he cleaned himself. Of course he would stay aboard. Where else would he stay? I could come over from my home in Waltham to visit him, Joe added. I bet my mom would drive me down to check up on him. I could bring him some fish fillets and toss them onto the deck, just like they were flying fish. You'd like that, wouldn't you, Felix? We better talk to the captain before we reach Plymouth. There won't be much time once we land. When I'm in the great cabin cleaning up, I hear Mr. Charlton and the captain discussing all the plans for the big celebration. Mr. Charlton said there will be television cameras and everything. Felix was such a little kitten when he came aboard. He's not used to big crowds. I'm afraid all the commotion will frighten him, Graham said. Sometimes it seemed as if Felix had always been at sea. He remembered less and less about his life back in England. He came to think of Mayflower, too, as his home, a home that was forever sailing onward.